Hello one and all, and welcome to After the Checkered Flag, our F1 special series here on the Behind the Glass podcast. Now, if you're watching here on YouTube, you're actually getting a sneak peek of the new podcast studio.
Look at the plant.
It's in a very raw state. There's probably a lot to explain, which Tony and I will be doing next week, not this week. This week is our Mila sort of recount special.
Oh God, I cannot wait
which was amazing.
for that.
It's not audio. Well, it is audio only. Anyway, you'll see. I'm not going to call it that now. So yeah, next week we'll explain everything that's been going on. But yes, you are now seeing, if you're watching on YouTube, the very
Early stages.
Yes, the beginnings of the new studio. But I don't care, because we're here to talk about what potentially, well, I'm going to say is or was the greatest race of 2022 so far.
Absolutely.
Let's see what the rest of the season has.
I thought you were going to go in and say the best race of the season. I'm like, well, we still have half to go.
Know, that's why I was like, I don't know how to quite pitch this, but it genuinely was, I think, yeah, the best race of the year, and we were lucky enough to be there.
It
Look
was
at that.
action-packed, and we saw a hell of a lot of it firsthand through our eyeballs.
After the Checkered Flag, moving up in the world.
Oh. We felt important and we weren't.
We were not. We were at the lowest level of the paddock. But yeah, if you've never listened to this show before, maybe you watched the British Grand Prix and then this has popped up on your feed and you're thinking, oh, I'd like to hear more about that epic race. Welcome. I am Sam from Seen Through Glass, sitting beside me, co-host, Paul from Supercars of London. And yes, usually we sit down and review races that have just been and give our very unofficial but over-idiotic thoughts. Yeah, exactly. About the racing. We're going to do things slightly differently, I guess, for the British Grand Prix because we were there. You were there the whole weekend. I was there Friday and Sunday. We had incredible access. We were in the paddock, in the thick of it.
It was just, the atmosphere was incredible.
The atmosphere was, I think it was more like a rock concert than an actual sporting event. 100%. Or more like, I guess, more like a football game. I don't really go to football games. I don't know,
the crowd.
That's what I mean. Like, oh my God. So we want to kind of, I guess, share our behind the scenes experience, because I imagine you've all, well, you watched the race and now maybe read all the stories after the race and watched the, oh my God, the replays of Joe's huge crash. So not much point in us dwelling on those things, but we are going to give you our perspective and the experiences we had.
That sounds like a plan.
So do you want to plug your do you want to plug who invited you, or you don't care? You don't need to plug anything. You can just say you were there.
I was there from Friday morning until Sunday afternoon. That's
all you need to say?
So far, I actually think that's all I'm allowed to say. It's very strange at the moment what is going on in my email inbox. I'm sure at some point I will be allowed to elaborate. And there's actually been content on my Instagram talking about the partnership in the lead up to this. And for unknown reasons at the moment, I have to keep fairly stum.
Okay, but you were there. So I was there in the paddock. Fantastic. Well, I can reveal who I was with. On Friday, I was there with Pirelli, which was super nice, in their motorhome, and I got their hot laps experience, which I'm going to dive into in 2 seconds. And then on Sunday, I was there with Alfa Romeo.
That is epic.
So when the Joe crash happened, I was like,
yeah.
What? So I was texting all my contacts, being like, is he alive? None of them replied, and that just made us worry even more.
Yeah.
So to kick off with the Friday quickly, obviously we had a bit of rain, unexpected rain on the Friday.
It came down
hard and out of nowhere. Made things very exciting. I thought, well, this is gonna upset the weekend flow, because a lot of the talk, I think, going into the weekend was that this was going to be Mercedes' potentially the most competitive weekend of the year.
Smooth tarmac, able to run the car incredibly low. It favoured their setup in comparison to some of the street circuits that we've seen when they are bouncing up and down like they're on a trampoline.
Exactly. And as Hamilton fans, sorry if you're new here, yes, we are. We were excited by that. It was like, this is
of course.
So we wanted to see FP1 and be like, oh, what's going to happen about...
As an F1 fan, it's becoming a that weekend was setting up nicely to be a 6-car race.
This is exactly it. We thought, here we go. It's going to be good. And then the rain came down. It's like, we know nothing. But I was lucky enough to get, amazing hot laps experience with Nico Hülkenberg.
Talk to me
in Advantage
about that, because I've seen multiple Formula One weekends, and every single time those hot laps look insane, and I've never experienced it.
I've been so spoiled to have quite a few passenger rides with F1 drivers over the years.
Oh, wow.
Every single time, it's like no other experience. F1 drivers are insane. Like
aliens.
Aliens.
Yeah.
They just do not have a brain, is my understanding of it. Especially when you put them in a road car. They're just like, this thing is so slow. I'm going to drive just the absolute nuts off it. So, Vettel, Ocon, I mean, Aitken I will include because he has driven Formula 1 cars. I'm feeling like I'm missing a few people now. But anyway, let's skip ahead to Hulkenberg. In a standard Vantage. And I got in and he seemed super bored. He was like, I've been paid to be here. This is the 6th weekend I've been doing this and I hate my life. That was the impression I got. I was like, oh.
Well, he is at a Formula 1 weekend, not driving a Formula 1 car, which obviously is what he wants to do, what he's continuing to strive to do. And he lost the seat.
And was it 1 year ago that he was super sub at Silverstone, or was it 2 years ago that he was super
I feel like he's super sub at any given opportunity.
But I think that was one of the races that he'd come back.
It was 2020, 2021. I think he jumped into the car a few times.
Yeah. Anyway, so he was depressed. So I was like, I've got to try and bring the best out of you here, Nico. And I just said to him, like, can we go sideways? And he's like, yeah, we can try. And my good Lord, I mean, he did not mess around. We were properly, I mean, he was so aggressive because I think he was like, I probably haven't slid it much and I'm going to try and slide it. And we were all over the place. Going through turn 2, as in the fast left-hander,
oh God.
We already had a bit of a move on. I was like, oh my, Nico, don't kill me, please. But I think I brought some humor out of him. By the end, I was like, bloody hell. And he was taking the piss and he was going, bloody hell, bloody hell, this is crazy.
Whilst he feels like he's driving in slow motion.
Literally. If you watch the footage back, he looks like he's asleep. And I was there like, I couldn't hold my head up. I was like, oh my God. So it was unbelievable and actually a pretty good weekend, pretty good way to start the weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
And feed into it. But that was probably the highlight for Aston Martin at the British Grand Prix. It's
the fastest their cars moved.
I was literally going to say the rest of the weekend it was a bit of a disaster for them. But anyway, let's skip ahead to the main show on Sunday because qualifying, yes, was exciting and we got some interesting action. But I think Sunday's what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Because that was, firstly, there's lots to discuss, but also the day that we were there together, we had a shared experience.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
We watched the race on a television.
Yeah.
I think that's probably worth talking about. Being in the paddock is incredible. Up until the lights go out where you have no view.
So this is what's
any of
so
the tarmac.
I had a couple of people with me who'd never been to an F1 race before. There were other guests of Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
So, and they've been to a lot of Formula E.
Oh, okay.
You go to Formula E as an invited guest, you're basically in the car. Like your access is, you just do not get access like that anyway. So they're like,
stood on the track.
Literally, just waving the checkered flag. So it was like, where do we watch the race from? I'm like, probably the motorhome. They're like, yeah, but where can we see the cars? I'm like, no, the motorhome. So let's try and break this down quickly. Obviously, you have levels of access at a Formula 1 race. You can have general access, you have grandstand access, then there's sort of additional hospitality at different races that they might do. But the F1's VIP hospitality is Paddock Club, which is usually above the pit lane, and if not very near the pit lane, and is like a super 5-star hotel restaurant experience.
First class, if you're traveling on a plane in first class, it's the equivalent of that at a Formula 1 race.
Exactly that. So every team has their own like room/restaurant with beautiful table service, amazing food. Usually the team members come through and do Q&As. You get some merch sometimes. You get a little patio. We can go out and look over the garage just below you so you can see the pit stop action. You can see the start line. It's an amazing experience, but it's definitely what's called corporate hospitality.
For sure.
So a lot of the people there don't know anything about F1. They've just been given tickets. They're like, I'll give it a little day out. And often I would say it's like going to a really nice restaurant and watching the race on TV because it's so rare that you actually go out to the balcony apart from the pit stops to see anything because really the race start and then if you want to follow the race, you've got to go and watch it on the TV. So a lot of people are just drinking champagne and eating nice food. So it's very, very nice. But it's often marred in controversy because it says Paddock Club and everyone gets there and they look out the window the other side and they can see the paddock where all the drivers are and the TV crews. They go, wait, let's go down there. Let's go meet Lewis Hamilton. And then security go, "Oh no, sir, sorry, your pass does not give you access to the paddock. You are in the paddock club." So it's quite weird because it's, you know, there's, I think the cheapest paddock club tickets year round are about £6,000.
Wow.
At Miami they were 15,000.
What?
Yeah, because each track,
USD?
Must be USD,
Yeah.
but I think each track can up and down. I
Okay.
think Monaco's a bit more expensive, but
Sounds
traditionally
about
it's around £6,000.
Seb's charging.
Seb's dad's running that. But you can't actually access the paddock, so that, you know, a little bit controversial. Then you have paddock passes, which are usually team invites or F1 invites. The paddock passes traditionally have been kind of the harder or the more gold dust access to get because you are in the thick of it. And usually the only way to go in there is motorhomes, and to be invited into a motorhome, you've got to be with a team or a big sponsor of the team, etc., etc. So the ultimate dream combination is paddock and paddock club, which I think I've got like twice in my life, and I mean, this sounds so out of touch, but like those weekends vividly in my mind is like, oh my god, basically go anywhere except the grid.
Yeah,
the grid is the upper.
The grid walk is above
echelon.
paddock.
Yeah, paddock, and then grid. You get a little green sticker, which means you can go in the grid. So anyway, the reason we're telling you all of this is because for this weekend we both had just paddock. Which means, as I was saying before, you actually can't see the track because you can't get access to Paddock Club to go and look out over the start line and over the pit garages. You're just in the paddock with no visible view of the track. So you have to resort to watching on TV, either in the motorhomes or, as we did, at the press pen.
Which was great fun, but also our view got blocked quite a lot.
Yeah. So I'm sure, again, if you watched it on TV, you'll know when drivers crash out or retire from the race, or at the end of the session, they'll all go to a big old pen where all the TV crews, the international media, will stand around and wait to get sound bites and interview them. And nowadays they stand in front of a big TV screen. And so we actually found a way that if we stood by that TV screen, we could also leave the paddock, run up to a hill and see the final corner. Yeah. So we did see some on-track action. Yeah. And we thought, this is where we'll base ourselves. And if things are getting spicy, we'll run up there. We basically just stayed by the TV for 90% of the time. But you're right. There was crews always. We're punters. So we're standing behind the crews. At one point, we say, your manager just goes up and goes, "Excuse me, mate, can you move? I'm trying to watch the TV." I was like, dude, they're working. Yeah. Like, that's their job, to stand there and interview drivers, and you've told them to get out of the way.
so that we could watch it.
So that we could watch it on the TV. But yeah, so it was a good place to watch there, wasn't it?
It was epic because we could see what was going on the TV. There's obviously a slight delay with the TV, which actually gives us about 5 seconds more time to scan our passes out, run up the stairs, which, by the way, my watch was loving, and then see the action as they were coming through the final few corners. And we did get to see some really close wheel-to-wheel action with our eyes on track, and then we'd run back down and watch it on the TV. Yeah. To see what happened further around the track.
Not quite as glamorous if you're sitting there going, damn, you guys, what amazing actors. We were doing the same as you at home, just watching on TV.
I actually walked 35 kilometres over the 3 days.
Up and down the paddock.
Basically.
That's ridiculous. Yeah. I guess to and from the paddock, right?
Also because the traffic was so bad leaving, where the wing is at Silverstone, where they've built it, is actually like the furthest point. So when you're walking or driving through to get out of the main gate, there was just traffic because it's one road in, one road out. And so we eventually walked every single day, which was about 35 minutes from the wing back to the main gate. But yeah,
I should have done that because it took me 2.5 hours to get from the paddock to my car at the end of the race.
I have heard from F1 teams, they've said that Silverstone, in terms of logistically getting in and out of the paddock, is the worst out of the whole season.
Wow. Yeah, that was pretty
classic Brits.
Complaining about the traffic. But yeah, so it was a great spot because we were also, we were in there. We had Natalie Pinkham, we had Ted Kravitz, we had the Sky Italia, we had Spanish reporters right in front of us. We were sort of in the mix of recognisable faces, and as the race then progressed, we had George Russell coming for his sound bites and then kneeling down and watching the restart with all of us, and so you got to. It was a fun place to actually be, and on top of that, it was where they were bringing all of the crashed cars.
We saw all of the cars
on
back.
Flatbeds, which I think was fed into a lot of the coverage. So where you saw them being unloaded in the paddock, that's where we were. We were standing right there and smelling.
Did you see us?
Yeah. We were there waving. So I guess let's kind of do it as a play-by-play, we've got to start off with lap 1 of start 1 and Zhou's big crash.
Yeah.
Which I think, we've all overanalyzed. I'm sure you've all overanalyzed. Terrifying. When we first saw it, we were kind of a bit confused by the minute because I think we were watching Hamilton on his mighty rise to third.
Yeah.
Like, come on. And I just saw a car in the back of the shot and I was like, that's upside down. That car's definitely upside down. Then we get the red flag and is now, I think, appropriate tradition in Formula One. They don't show anything until they know people are safe. But we were super confused because we were like, who is in that crash?
Yeah.
I think they showed Russell, him jumping out and running off. It looked like, we were like, where are you off to, mate? And we were like, oh, okay, no, it's Albon. And then we saw Albon's car.
Then we saw Tsunoda's car.
Tsunoda drive off. So it was a while that we were like, what's going on? And then you were the one that clocked, oh, hold on a sec, where's Zhou? Like, where's Zhou? We haven't seen him. So at that point, we realized, someone was upside down, and all the cars we'd seen were on the right way up.
Yeah.
So we very quickly realized that maybe there was something pretty horrific going on. And whispers were kind of spreading, I think, at the paddock at that point.
Yeah.
And it was just that kind of sinking moment of, well, he was upside down last time we saw him.
Going very fast.
Yeah, going very fast. Yeah. And actually, when we found out what eventually happened, I mean, I don't think any of us could have imagined that that's actually the scenes that took place.
No, not at all. We waited 10 minutes that felt more like half an hour before we even got any news. And it was actually your phone that had signal, that you were able to access TikTok to suggest that the car had gone over the tyre wall and they were trying to figure out what the hell had gone on. So it was a long time before we saw any replays, and we only saw replays on the main TV once I think Zhou had been confirmed okay, conscious and out of the car.
And you would think, in the paddock that we might be able to pick up on chats or women. I mean, I was there with Alfa Romeo, so I was texting my contact, like, is he all right? Like, what's going on? No reply from them, obviously, at the time. And then standing there with pit lane reporters and journalists, I kind of thought they'd be chatting about it, but no one had a clue. No one knew nothing. So even my sister who was watching was texting me like, what's going on? I said, we can't see anything. We can't really get on our phones. No one here seems to have a clue. So it was quite a terrifying and nerve-wracking moment.
It was really scary.
All the emotions that I guess you were all experiencing on TV, and a lot of people in the crowd were obviously experiencing who'd seen it or knew what was going on. And of course, at that point, we didn't know Russell had run off to go and help. He just leapt out of the car. So yeah, it was a shocking and terrifying moment.
I think the only indicator that we had was that Russell had left the Alfa Romeo, as in, like, we'd seen him run over to the crash site, and we'd also seen him leave, as in
get back to his car.
He'd had confirmation Zhou was okay in some form, obviously trapped in the car, but therefore he went and sort of removed himself from the situation. It was almost that confirmation. We think he's okay.
That was it. I think we all said, okay, well, if George's gone back to his car and he doesn't look like he's flapping, then we're assuming things are going to be all right. But the bad thing was, I mean, it was like 3 hours before I was chatting with Zhou, like in the Alfa Romeo hospitality. I'd met him at Goodwill. Actually, weirdly enough, he trains at the old studio. So I met him numerous times before, but we'd been at Festival of Speed together the week before, and then we were catching up.
Testing your reaction times, if I remember seeing the video.
Reaction times, exactly.
Which was terrible.
Which was disastrous. And it was quite a mad realization that it was the same guy who literally, he escaped death. I mean, pre-Halo, that's a dead guy. I mean, pre-Halo, that is a dead guy, because the roll hoop completely failed. The violence in which the car flipped smashed that roll hoop, and that's right on his head.
The car was as flat as this table in front of us, if you remove the legs. And I was going to say something else. I've completely forgotten about it.
Well, as he would have dug into the gravel.
Have you seen the video?
Which one?
They've gone and looked at the tarmac and the damage of the tarmac. It's over a centimetre dug. The tarmac has just been stripped away. A centimetre
and the violence. So
terrifying.
Without Halo, he's 100% dead.
Yeah.
I think also we have to be so grateful that there was no fire. If there was fire, again,
how much fluid would be? That car would have been at its heaviest point with all of the fuel on.
Terrifying, but luckily, and it shows.
How did the fence survive?
Well, I mean, I guess that's what catch fencing is all about, right? Like the whole thing was. It is such a massive round of applause for F1 and their push, and the FIA's push for safety. That we're seeing accidents like Grosjean's, like Zhou's, that drivers are walking away from, and people are walking away from, because even if you actually look at some of the fan footage,
Yeah.
how close the fans were to all of that, and the fact that no debris ended up causing any injury to fans or marshals or anything. So yeah, absolutely amazing. And also testament to properly built circuits, not to have a go at any kind of a street circuits or anything like that. It really does show that proper infrastructure, permanent circuits have got everything in place to try and help if these accidents happen. But actually there'll be some people who will say, well, without the gravel, anyway. But that wasn't the only shocking moment, of course. We also had the protesters, which personally I don't want to talk about too much.
No.
Because I think, as a lot of people said, everyone has the right to protest, and we probably have to applaud what they are actually trying to raise awareness for, but they not only put their lives in danger, like they literally tried to die, but also therefore putting marshals' lives in danger, Formula One drivers in danger. Like the whole thing was too reckless. And I know I've seen some interviews where they're saying, well, they've done what they wanted to achieve. They're getting publicity. But that publicity could have been so horrifically wrong if that was 5 dead people.
For sure.
So that's all I'm going to say about it.
Oh, that's absolutely, I think you've nailed it.
Fine.
Moving on.
So we then had the question over whether George would be allowed to re-enter the race or not. And from my side, I don't know the rules well enough, but I kind of thought, well, he's got out of the car.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's allowed to get back in. We saw the Mercedes arriving back in the paddock, didn't we? And like 1,000. Should we tell us about the Mercedes versus the Williams?
Yeah. So both of these cars have come in on separate low loaders. They've been hauled off the track as quickly as possible. And was it the Williams that came in first? I think the Williams came in first. I think
you're right, yeah.
And it comes in and everyone's looking to see the damage, trying to work out whether that's fixable. We all turn into these professional mechanics to be like, oh yeah, that strut looks broken. Like, as if we knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
And the car sits there. No one from Williams comes for 10, 15 minutes.
Longer, for sure.
One guy turned up to take photos. In this time, the Mercedes had also come in with almost like a trail of an entire pit crew following the low loader in, all in Mercedes gear. All of the, Russell's engineers and pit crew had come to collect the car, but they were almost waiting for the car's arrival. And this Williams car just looked like it was deserted, as if everyone had forgotten about it in the team. And it took forever for anyone to come and recover the car from the Williams team, as if they had something else to do. I think they were just all supporting Latifi.
Yeah. Well, it was this, as you said, this mad scene where clearly Merck were like, right, we've got to try and fix this car. Like, even if at that point, they didn't even know if Russell was going to be allowed to re-enter, but it was like they were there immediately. The minute the car was back, they were taking it off, they were putting it on rollers. Right, come on, lads. Like, all of them pushed the car was gone. 2 seconds, back to the garage, back to be worked on. You're right. This Williams car.
It's like tumbleweed.
And literally, the low loader drivers were like, anyone?
Yeah. They didn't know what to do with it.
At
one point, I was going to take it.
Yeah. And then eventually, like 20 minutes later, it was like they were kind of lost. These kind of really out of breath. Oh, here it is, lads. All right, okay. What should we do with it now? It sounds comedic, but it really was. I guess it shows the difference in money and mentality.
I was going to say it does highlight the budget differences and
100%, and that kind of mentality of Merck were like, we can rebuild this car. Because there's a chance George can get back out there, and he can get points. Where with Albon, I think Williams like, we don't have the spare parts, and even if we do, I'm not sure what's going to happen. So, anyway, so that was kind of mad and a pretty shocking first hour of the Grand Prix that we didn't expect. But eventually we got the hint that we were restarting. A bit of confusion over the starting order, but we were ready and off and ready to go again. And I think it felt like we were sort of almost in a slightly... We talked about it recently, the repetitive nature of, right, here we go, Ferrari out front, but Verstappen's just waiting, and he's going to get the move done.
The talk throughout the paddock, whoever I was talking to, regardless of the qualifying order, we all were talking as though Ferrari at some point were going to sabotage their entire race, one way or another.
Funny you should say that, Paul.
And whilst, yes, there were obviously talks throughout as we get further on in the race, what happened. Sainz, on the other hand, on the second restart, had almost got a rocket up his bottom from head honcho at Ferrari to say, no. Turn 2, you are going to lead the race. Turn 3, you are going to lead the race. And he got his elbows out, and it was so good to see the Red Bulls harassing Sainz. And he was just fending them off left, right, and centre. It was as if he had like rockets coming out of his wheels to just stop the Red Bulls from coming anywhere near him. And it was so exciting because the speed of Sector 1 at Silverstone up until that really sharp right and then almost like a U left was, it was so exciting to watch.
It was brilliant because I think, first time round, he got caught out by Max. He had a crap start, and he was like, oh, well, that's the race over. And we were joking going into it. I was like, if Verstappen's in the lead by the end of lap 1, he's gone.
Yeah.
Like, he's absolutely gone. Like that. I'm gonna go home.
The incident at the start of the first start actually saved it so that we could have the restart and get a much more exciting race. Because had Verstappen just cruised on through past Sainz and the crash not had happened, then we probably would have been in for quite a dull race.
Potentially, because I think, he looked like he had a pace advantage and was ready, even on the second restart, whilst you're right, Sainz. I mean, there'll be numerous ways that we can talk about how Sainz really went out and won this Grand Prix. He did not inherit it, and there were plenty of times where second drivers, yes, I did just call Carlos the second driver, inherit victories. But he went out and he won this race. But yeah, definitely in that beginning sort of stint, it looked like Max was just waiting to have him. And I think when Carlos made the mistake, we were all like, oh, come on, Carlos. Slightly predictable, but you were doing so well. And there was a bit of a sort of deflated feeling, I think, at least within the sort of, British supporters, because let me just say this right now, and we're going to talk about it fully. Oh, it was a biased crowd. I mean, sometimes
yes.
you will give us a hard time for being biased towards Lewis Hamilton and British drivers. Don't come to the British Grand Prix if you feel that way. I know we have international listeners, but a lot of British listeners that love Max Verstappen and other drivers, and they say they don't like it when we side with the GOAT. But by God, it was clear who the British fans were supporting and who they did not like. So when Verstappen went through and Sainz and made that mistake, everyone was like, oh, come on. So the reaction when Verstappen lost pace.
Yeah.
Obviously, we now know because of the sort of stalling of his floor, that debris that got stuck in his floor, the place erupted. Like, as I say, give me a good popular culture reference. If it was Justin Bieber and Ludacris came out for that collab,
exactly, it's exactly like that. I was going to go down the sports route, but if you're going to a concert and you're going to see, let's take Ed Sheeran at the weekend, for example.
Please.
Ed Sheeran performing, all of a sudden, surprise guest, Stormzy comes out. Pandemonium.
It was that kind of a pop.
Yeah.
Because everyone at that point had kind of settled down a little. It was a bit like, okay. And then out of nowhere, and we heard it over the tannoy, over the public announcer system before you saw it. Wait, Verstappen looks slow.
Yeah.
And the crowd just went, it was unbelievable from a moment of atmosphere and excitement. It was an incredible
and by this point we were actually in the crowd watching it with the track in front of us rather than on the TV, so it was actually like a perfect moment to be there.
Perfect moment.
I was running around with my top off.
And from that point on, I think we just had the most incredible race ahead of us. So Verstappen comes into the pits thinking he had a slow puncture or whatever problem he had, and he was kind of out of it, and the crowd was going wild, crowd was going nuts. And then we had what felt like, for the last 7 years, a classic Lewis Hamilton hunt.
Yeah.
It was hammer time all over again. Something we haven't seen all year.
Yeah.
That, everyone, and even ourselves at times, have been quick to be like, oh, Lewis is struggling this year. And, Georgie Russell's got Lewis pinned down. Like
Silverstone brings out a different side to him, and I don't really want to go into too much detail making this all about the Lewis Hamilton show.
We can't, because we do every week.
But Silverstone, it does bring this beast, this demon out in Lewis that we saw all through practice, all through qualifying too. He was constantly faster. There were moments, obviously, when either the track dried and George put in a lap, but then you could always back Lewis to...
He had the upper hand, didn't he?
Yeah.
All weekend, I think, and he was determined to take a step forward and to prove a point. And, a lot of people asking, it was same Schumacher era for me. One thing that I really used to love about watching him, it's that gradual hunt, you know, and hey, look, we've seen plenty of Vettel, Verstappen, all these people, but there's something which I love as a fan of watching a driver that you support or want to support slowly reeling someone in, because you just see them coming, and he was just coming.
The inevitability
coming.
of a wheel-to-wheel track action.
It's not a second and a half per lap. We're like, oh, this is inevitable. It was over 10 or 15 laps. He was just taking a couple of tenths every lap, and that's why, because it builds this anticipation and this excitement. Whereas if someone's coming at over a second a lap, you're like, it's an inevitable thing. But no, he was just closing it, and then you got Sainz and Leclerc having this war of words and this fight, and Ferrari's tactics again being very questionable, but Sainz just refusing to get out of the way. You know, he won that race by sticking true for as long as he did, and but it was thrilling to watch. Now, if you are not a Hamilton, a Ferrari fan, if you are a pure Verstappen fan, maybe it wasn't thrilling. Maybe you're sitting there like, oh, whatever, who cares? But I think if you were either a red Ferrari fan or a Hamilton fan, it was exhilarating, because it was this whole
hey, even if you're a Red Bull fan, like, there was one of the greatest comebacks in Perez. The speed in which he caught the pack from his early pit stop, and making his way back through the field, and then obviously net positions with the pits, everything that was going on. That comeback in itself, like, again, going back to just having a Mercedes in the fight, making it more than just a Ferrari versus a Red Bull. And I saw a tweet that was saying, how good is Formula One having Lewis in the fight, in the mix? And I don't think it's necessarily Lewis in particular. Obviously, it's excitement because he's such a huge name within Formula One, but whether that was Lewis or Russell, having a Mercedes, a Ferrari, and a Red Bull all fighting for the win just makes the race weekend that much more spectacular.
Well, at the restart, the final restart, when we had McLaren, Alpine, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull all jostling for the final podium positions, it was absolute mayhem, and what we hoped this entire season and these regulation changes would provide. It was obviously slightly superficial because of the safety car, but who cares? It was brilliant to see. But yeah, you're right. We were standing up on the hill at this point watching the live action rather than the TV, and we were focused on Lewis hunting down these Ferraris and a few other bits, and then every now and again, by the time we'd watch them, we'd turn around and be like, holy crap, there's Perez. Like, and you kept saying like, oh my god, like how close is he getting? And he was really on a march, old Sergio, and good to see, and using the unleashing the potential of that Red Bull, and I think testament or proves our theory that if everything had run smoothly, Verstappen would have just romped away with it.
For sure.
But that's what we're seeing this year, is that Ferrari, for whatever reason, tactics or reliability, are throwing away their championship challenge, but so are Red Bull at times through reliability or whatever. So there's no guarantees. It's back to like the 90s, you know, where just because you got the quickest car doesn't mean you're going to be winning or picking up all the biggest points. So yeah, so we had that first sort of big stint with Lewis chasing, and on that pace, it felt like he was on for the win. It felt like, okay, we were like, oh, this feels a bit too good to be true. Like, he genuinely seems to be faster than the Ferraris. He's hunting them down. Like, it's a battle. Then we have to change the tyres. And it was like, oh, what's the play here? Because Lewis is just staying out. But again, it all sort of came to fruition. And we're like, okay, he's going for that longer play. He's going to be on the fresh tyres. And he did start closing them in again. And we're like, oh, this is going to be on. He's going to go for the overtake on track for the victory. And we started being like, this place is going to erupt. If Lewis Hamilton wins the British Grand Prix, this is going to be, we're like, what party are we going to? What after party are we going to? I was texting Vicky, be like, babe, I'm not coming home. Lewis Hamilton is about to win. So yeah, there was a moment there where we were all like, this is insane. Yeah, what if? But we then get this dramatic final safety car. And I think, again, well, it's the moment of, why haven't they pit Leclerc? Bloody Ferrari. And I think you sent a few things over, and our theory at the time, we couldn't double stack them, blah, blah, blah. But my whole thing was, they have literally chosen to give the preferential treatment to Sainz. That's what they've done. It's not like a adverse strategy. And I think Bernardo's come out saying, we've done the same thing that Hamilton did at Abu Dhabi. That was their choice, was right, we're going to put Sainz on the more aggressive strategy.
He qualified on pole, arguably wasn't as fast as Leclerc during the race. It was a difficult decision. If Ferrari only were able to pick one driver, it was an incredibly difficult decision, and I think that they probably would have got flack regardless of which way round they wanted to do it. Whether they wanted to put Leclerc and make him win, it would have made more sense from a world championship point of view, but also maybe this confidence that Sainz has now that he's got this first win under his belt. They're thinking the long play of being like, look, we've got Sainz over the next 2 years. If we were to drop him back and almost do a driver number one is Leclerc and you're number two, therefore your sacrifice so Leclerc can win. What does that do to Sainz's mentality? What does that do to his confidence for the rest of the season to be, I'm just the Ferrari number two. I've had a rubbish season. I've been unlucky. I've made a few mistakes. Like, this is just going downhill. They've given him, not they've given him this win, but in that sense of, actually, we're going to pit you. What are we going to see? Are we going to see a new beast from Sainz now that he's almost like chalked off and ticked that box of first race win? Let's go and get some more.
But I see that as only a negative. Ferrari have always had a number one and a number two driver throughout their entire history for the effective or previously effective reason of solely focus on one driver winning that championship. And
how's that played out for them?
Not great. What they've done here is, so yeah, you're right. Okay, whatever maybe prior decisions of whoever's leading into turn one, all that sort of stuff. Or, okay, our safer bet is Leclerc's on younger tyres. We'll bring Sainz in. If Hamilton keeps going, Sainz is going to be on the fresher tyres. He can jump. Like, okay, so maybe that was their thinking. But they're letting Leclerc, who's their closest championship contender, with Verstappen back in 7th or 8th, be at risk of moving down the pack as he did and ending up off the podium. Whereas Sainz, if he'd ended up further down the pack, what's the big deal? Because he's way off anyway. He was 6th in the championship or something like that going into that race. So in my mind, the way I read it is, as a team, you've picked the wrong driver for the championship. This was an opportunity for Leclerc to get maximum points against Verstappen.
Sure,
It's not a race victory. It's a points over a championship type thing.
Yeah.
And if you're pessimistic, you go, right, we pick Leclerc and no one else stops. He's still coming out in third
with fresh tyres.
Yeah. Like it, against a Mercedes, okay, which has been closing in on you, but you've got it's just a disastrous championship decision in my mind, especially when over the last 4 races you've had retirements, you've had other strategic blunders. They need to be focusing on Leclerc.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sainz, like, you blew it already. It's too late. It's too late. We're however many races we're into the season. You had your moment. Now, with the way that things are turning out, Ferrari have to take these moments and just go, because what have we got now? Oh, Sainz is now 5th in the championship. He's now 100 points off rather than 112. Like, it's, so what? Like, you've done nothing for yourself. You've just lost points where, so that was my opinion. And I think as Leclerc, over the last 6 races, 4 of them he could have won, was in a position to win, and through either retirements or strategic blunders, he's not been able to. And that is critical. In a championship year, that's critical.
Are we going to be talking about this section of the championship at the end of the championship as Verstappen romps to another world championship very easily, potentially? I mean, but we've seen how the championship can swing, and I don't think Red Bull have completely nailed their car to be able to reliably get to the end of the race, both of them. So,
and if it can be that affected by a little bit of debris on the floor, I mean,
shows how highly strung that car is.
Long way to go, for sure, and it can tip and turn, but it will only tip and turn. Twiggy! Sorry. Twiggy had an operation this week, and she's not allowed to lick her wounds, and she's looking very wound-licking. As we've seen, the only way for it to swap around is if at the time when your championship rival is having an issue, you take maximum points, and that's what Verstappen's done. When Leclerc has had these blunders, he's been there, sweeping in, getting maximum points. And if not, it's Perez. But no, Ferrari just go, cool, see you later. We'll just fucking allow this all to go to hell. So that was frustrating to see. But it also gave us, Perez his opportunity to steal second, which was amazing. But this incredible battle, the Sainz, Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, and Alonso sniffing around at their heels, was possibly some of the most exciting fighting. Sure. And probably, this is punchy, I'm going to say 3 of the best wheel-to-wheel combat drivers that we've got in the field at the moment. Of course, there are others. But Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, for close, precise wheel-to-wheel racing, I don't think it gets much better.
Yeah.
And I know Lewis was a bit punchy coming out being like, see, you can go into cops 2 cars wide. I've seen a replay. Lewis, you were about 3 foot wider last year, mate. So I'm not quite sure you can claim that. But yeah, those dicing, especially Hamilton, Leclerc, but also Perez, was unbelievable, wasn't it?
It was epic to watch, regardless of whether we were watching on a TV or it doesn't matter. I've seen the replay so many times, and also I still get goosebumps on Crofty's commentary as well, because it's just like, as everything is happening, it's just the combination of the audio whilst you're watching it, and to I kind of came out of that going, oh my God, like I have been massively underrating Silverstone as a track. When you actually consider that against other tracks and what they can provide, Silverstone is unbelievable.
When you get a good British Grand Prix, you're so right. And I think actually, again, talking about purpose-built permanent circuits, this showcased the 2022 regs the best in terms of that close racing.
For sure.
Because those last 10 laps, they were all able to follow each other for the entire time.
Mick Schumacher and Verstappen.
We're going to come on to that because I'm going to hyperventilate. But they were genuinely able to dice for 10 laps, 6 cars. For 10 laps, we're able to absolutely chop and change. And the pop of when Hamilton did that double overtake, which unfortunately he wasn't able to stick, but he did that double overtake, the pop in the entire circuit was unbelievable. 150,000 people went mental. And can I just say, for those of you that are like, you guys are biased, every single person in the interview pen, I mean, Natalie Pinkham was jumping.
Yeah.
People lost their minds.
Yeah.
Because no matter, I think, whether you are a Hamilton fan or not, to see him do something, it was just a moment of pure like,
it was magic. And I think you could see it coming. There wasn't enough space going through those corners, and Lewis went for that gap, and that shows to me that he 100% believes he can not just keep up with the youngsters in faster cars. I think he still believes he can win a world championship. The fact that he was jumping into that gap and almost like risking it all to just get P2. He knew he was never going to catch Sainz, but there was some moments earlier on in the race where you saw him be quite conservative, where he backed off and nearly lost the place to Alonso on the second restart. And you're thinking, oh God, like he's going so conservative to just try and get these points, pick up as much as he can, whether it's P4, P6, P8, whatever. But then at that moment, you just saw this hunger going through a gap that could have easily disappeared in a heartbeat.
Well, I think it was respect. I think he and Perez have had such epic duels over the last few years, and Perez in that Red Bull, just the ultimate defensive driver. But I think he just knew the situation, and you're right. I think I disagree about the restart. I think that car didn't fire into action as quickly as the other two. I think he was not being conservative. I think he was just at risk of being done by Alonso. I think Hamilton's fire that whole race was on another level. Whether we're going to see it again this year, I don't know, unless he's genuinely in the hunt for a victory. I think that was pure, I'm not coming to Silverstone and having the races that I've had this year. But then to just jump on the Max Verstappen bashing wagon. Sorry, guys. Come at me. I don't care. You do it every time. You slate us in the comments. It's fine. This is my opinion. It might be wrong in your mind. It's what it is. We saw the Schumacher-Verstappen fight on the last lap. Go on, Mick. Out of nowhere, Mick Schumacher, again, having a dodgy ass season. He found some confidence, my God. Going for the lunges on Max Verstappen on the final lap. But, and I've seen a couple of people tweet this, probably other Hamilton fans, talking about that it was a bit of Verstappen 2021 that we saw, because this year he hasn't needed to. We've spoken about this quite a bit on After the Checkered Flag. He hasn't needed to, and also Leclerc drives in a way that Verstappen hasn't had the same aggression outwardly that we saw him with Hamilton last year. And I think a lot of people said, well, was it Hamilton's fault? And maybe. We've talked about that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they inspired each other to be that aggressive. But the way he chopped Schumacher into that final corner, which is what maybe Perez and Leclerc could have done, but there was such a pace disadvantage between Hamilton, Leclerc and Perez that they weren't really in a position. But Verstappen, and he's outwardly come out and said, I literally turned into the corner and made Mick choose what to do. And I've seen a few people quote this going, this isn't how racing should be. It's not like, right, well, I'm driving across the corner and you back out.
If you want to crash.
And Verstappen knew from a presence, a stature, and also a Haas getting points, Mick was going to back out. Like, Mick's not going to have a crash. But it's just not the way to go. It's a very effective way for Verstappen to go racing. He held the position. He won a championship. Oh, sorry. I've really
have
got myself in trouble there.
How many drivers, especially this weekend, have called Lewis an 8-time world champion?
Yeah.
Almost all of them.
That's not, maybe Max does as well. Anyway, that's the controversy. But yeah, it was a race that inspired incredible drives, left, right, and centre. Unbelievable action.
We've talked about the race, even though we were supposed to be talking about our behind-the-scenes experience.
It's a good
we
race.
get too excited. The race was so good.
So good. But yeah, it just incredible atmosphere, beautiful weather. It was fantastic.
Perfect day out.
And we now go to Austria. Which, I think might be what Max
Keeping our
Verstappen's
fingers crossed.
Oh, you never know.
Yeah.
But it'd be great to hear your thoughts, comments below. I know a lot of you will be very upset with how much we've spoken about Hamilton, how much we've slated.
Do you know
Max,
what I want to talk about? Because in the last episode, we talked about how Red Bull potentially, conspiracy corner,
love it,
aren't doing all of the nuts and bolts up properly on Perez's car. So, just like knocking back a few steps. Hey, you're too competitive,
too quick
against our golden child.
Now they need him to be competitive.
He, all weekend, because I saw, lucky enough in the paddock, which is where the drivers mill around, the amount of times that I saw all 20 drivers milling around, having chats, walking with their F1 team personnel, taking photos with people. It's just the coolest environment ever. Out of all of the drivers that I saw, Perez was 100% the most miserable all the time.
Really?
All weekend. Until
that's interesting.
He came back into the podium area and was smiling.
Happy. So maybe he was feeling a bit hard done by.
It was noticeable
that he was miserable.
How uninterested he was, talking to fans, talking to the Red Bull people, walking from his motorhome. And I don't know, maybe he's just like an emotionless guy, but I kind of just don't really get that vibe from him.
I wouldn't have thought so. I thought he would be a happy chappy.
Yeah. So
maybe you've picked up on something. Well, if you're going to the paddock for any future races, have a watch. Maybe Perez has been furious at Red Bull. But
maybe photocopy your VIP access so that you can give me one. I can zoom in on my lens and get those shots
Paul
of
was
Perez.
walking around like such a creepy paparazzi with this like real intense zoom lens, which worked wonders for you, but it was real creepy.
Hey, there was a lot of camera media guys in there that had bigger cameras than me
and bigger lenses. My God, some guys I was like, you need a crane to carry that lens.
Yeah.
Everyone always gives us a hard time for not talking about other drivers apart from the top drivers. Got to give a shout out to Latifi.
Yeah.
We always give him crap. That was a weekend. He genuinely performed well, outperformed Albon. Good on you, Latifi. Let's hope that wasn't your last race. Alonso getting more and more just punches the races go on, isn't he? He's just there or there.
At one point, I did think he was going to throw qualifying because he qualified quite well, and I just assumed he was going to put a red flag out.
Just for the bands.
Yeah.
Classic Alonso tactics. He continues to be Dick Dastardly, but he was there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Pretty quiet and uninspiring weekend for Danny Rick.
It was he felt like he was smiling through the pain.
And apart from that, any standouts? I mean, Mick Schumacher, as I say.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher. I mean, Haas in general, because obviously we talked the last podcast about how they either have a good qualifying or look like they're relatively competitive to get points, but don't this weekend. Double points. Yeah.
Go on.
K-Mag smashing it.
Jumped up. I think they're now 7th in the championship. Or 8th in the championship.
Yeah, I can imagine if they have a few more weekends like that, they will start jumping because Aston Martin...
They can get Alpha. They're a couple of points behind Alpha. So
especially after Zhou and Bottas.
Yeah, double DNFs.
I'm trying to think who else. Whether there was any sort of like little insights that I was capturing from the weekend. I would also just like to say how mental Sunday was, as in celebrity-wise.
You can sum that up quickly because I've been anxiously looking at the battery levels of my laptop. For
let's talk about Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise was a legend. As in, he came into the paddock and I'd seen various A, B, C, D, E list celebrities come in, take a few selfies, and then like wander off and get chaperoned into the hospitality as if to be like, okay, I'm done now. Tom Cruise came in and it was the biggest crowd of people. He stopped for every single photo. He said hi to every single person that he possibly could. He fist bumped people. He was in the paddock between the gate to the Mercedes hospitality. I would probably go as far as saying it was around 15 minutes it took. The crowd was amazing. And he was an absolute legend to just be engaging and interactive with everyone and not being. He is a super mega star, and he was just an absolute hero.
You hear it all the time, and famously, especially at premieres, he just spends all the time meeting fans. And I'd witnessed it before through previous work life, and he genuinely commands a reaction that very few other people in the world can do. And he, I think, maintains it by the way that he interacts with people, because the amount of people that were walking away from that gaggle of going, oh my God, I met Tom Cruise, or jumping with excitement, or happy because they got the photo, or they got a fist bump, or they talked to him, or they had an interaction with him. And he's so clever in that way, because people genuinely feel a connection and an excitement around him, like, oh my God, it's Tom Cruise. And yeah, I mean, it was amazing to see that just this huge group of people following him everywhere and screaming and shouting, and very cool, and a different level of celebrity
for sure
to Stormzy or Philip Schofield, international football players, whoever it might be. When someone like that turns up, you see what real mental celebrity is, and I think there's very few other people in the world that can capture that. A Brad Pitt, maybe a DiCaprio, maybe. I don't think a Justin Bieber in that situation would have.
No, I don't think so.
But there are a handful of international A-list film stars that just make people go mental, and he was one of them. So anyway, as I said, I've been anxiously looking at my my charge level, because I haven't set up my actual laptop charger in the new studio yet. But hopefully you've enjoyed our recap of the British Grand Prix. It was mental, as you say. We didn't talk too much about our behind-the-scenes experience because the race was so crazy. I felt like we had to go in.
We watched it on TV.
We watched it on TV, but from in the paddock. So yeah, let us know your thoughts below, the standout moments, the drivers that we haven't talked about that you wanted us to talk about, and why we're so wrong to just keep supporting Hamilton and bashing Verstappen.
I think it was...
we're staying true to who we are.
Yes, I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of it, so let's just wrap
Authentic.
it up.
Yeah. Okay. If you want to follow Paul, he's at Supercars London on most social media platforms. I'm at Seen Through Glass on most social media platforms. Hopefully, we'll be back with you in a week's time for the Austrian Grand Prix. Then we've also got the French Grand Prix. That one I am away for.
Okay.
Let's work on that. Anyway, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future After the Checkered Flag episodes, but also, of course, the main Behind the Glass episodes. And I suppose apart from that, we'll be back with you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.